Hello. Let me move my smoothie out of the way. Y'all don't want to see that. Welcome to Women Work Your Faith. My name is Sylvia Johnson, and today I am reviewing the Sunday School Lesson for Sunday, February the 1st. My hair's a mess. It's that kind of week, y'all. The title for our Sunday School Lesson is Passover, and this is the Bible basis, Exodus the 12th chapter, the 1st through the 14th verses. Our Bible truth, God gave Moses and the people instructions for the first Passover. The memory verse, and this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. Exodus the 12th chapter, the 14th verse. Our lesson aim, by the end of the lesson, we will recall events surrounding the institution of the Feast of Passover, reflect on the meaning of Passover and what it says about God, and develop a festival of praise to God for salvation. Hello again. It's 2 times in 1 week. I am coming to you all, so I'm doing a lot. I hope everyone was safe this week in the snow and in the ice. You see my snow shovel back there by the door. We got a little bit of snow. How you doing, Pastor Jones? We got a little bit of snow this week, but lots of ice just sitting on the road. And so I hope everyone is safe and that you're doing well and staying warm. Well, thank the Lord we don't have the snow you all have in Chicago. The little bit we got was enough to trip us up. So I am going to go over this lesson. I was looking over this, and I think I have a video for this one when we covered it a couple of years before. So if I do, I will link it in the description. But today we are talking about the Passover. And this is a popular story that you hear in church or in Sunday school. Bible stories for kids. And so some things to think about as we're looking over this lesson. One, the Lord is speaking to Moses and Aaron as he prepares to bring the final plague in Egypt. And this lesson picks up after their last encounter with Pharaoh. And we'll talk a little bit about that. In the Passover, the Lord provides an exemption or protection for the children of Israel from this final plague that he's going to bring on Egypt. And it's important to remember that this was an intentional act by God. He hardens Pharaoh's heart. So when Moses was coming to Pharaoh to tell him to let the people of God go out and to sacrifice to their God, Pharaoh hardens his heart. But then God begins to harden Pharaoh's heart. And if you think about the things that were happening in these plagues, a reasonable minded person would come to a point like, never mind. You know what? Let's go ahead and do what he says and just let this be over. But God hardens Pharaoh's heart. He is working a purpose intentionally. And the purpose is to glorify himself. So, and the next point I want to say is this is something that the children of Israel would do and continue to do to remember how God delivered them from Egypt. And it symbolizes what Christ would do to save us from death and deliver us from our sins. So, think about those things, and we'll chit-chat about it a little bit as we continue on in the lesson. And so we're going to start. I got lots of books and papers, so we'll make sure I don't miss anything. We're going to start Exodus, the 12th chapter, the very first verse. It says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." So this starts with God speaking to Moses and Aaron after he has told them that he is bringing the final plague on Egypt. Moses and Aaron had been before Pharaoh. Pharaoh got hot. God hardens his heart. And he's like, I'm not going to see you anymore. And God's like, don't worry about him. Here's what I'm going to do. And so he tells them what he's going to do in visiting each home, each space, each animal, everyone. And he's going to take the life of the firstborn. He's going to strike Egypt. But then here in the Passover, he is providing Moses and Aaron the instructions for how the children of Israel are going to be exempt from this. And so he tells them that this is going to start a new year for you. From here on, this is how you count your time. The time of this people begins with what I'm doing for them at this time. And so remember that your life begins with God. When I was a kid, people would always get up and testify on that day that they got saved. They would always get up and they would say, on this day, 17 years ago, on this day, 33 years ago, on this day, 46, 27, whatever, right? Because their new life began with salvation. And think of it kind of in that context, right? This assembly of people, the children of Israel, their time now would begin when they were delivered from Egypt. Continuing on to Exodus 12:3, speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. So the first thing is speaking to all the congregation. Everyone in this assembly, this collection of people that were part of the descendants of Jacob, that we now call the children of Israel, right? Let them all know that they need to get a lamb. And this lamb should be enough to feed everyone of the household. And your Sunday school lesson speaks to what a household would be, right? And so you have the head of the house and his sons and their wives and their children. So don't think of it like me, right? I'm a household by myself. Think about the broader extended family sense. We have a lot of international people that live in my neighborhood, and it's a multi-generational home. Think of it in that context, right? So each household was a larger body, and the lamb that you were to select had to be enough to feed that larger body. If it by chance was a smaller household like me, then households that were next to each other should join together in their selection of the lamb. And then it tells you in verse 5, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. Now we are getting into the characteristics of the lamb that was selected. So you couldn't just get a baby animal, whichever one floats your boat, right? It had to meet certain criteria. It could only be the young of a sheep or a goat, and it was without blemish, meaning that there were no deformities or things that were wrong with it, no illnesses. You couldn't get a lamb that you were going to throw away anyway, right? You couldn't get something that was not precious and of value. And the thing about it is, when you have livestock or anything that is prime and it is perfect, it is without fault, it has everything that you would desire for it to have, you treat it differently, you see it differently, you value it differently. This lamb was young and could be used for other purposes, but God tells them to select it and its perfectness for this purpose, to set it up and then set it apart. So it said, keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. So this lamb that didn't have a broken leg, you had to treat it special and separate it from the others to keep it out of trouble, to keep it clean, to keep it in good condition. When something is set apart for a purpose, you take care of it for it to fulfill that purpose. So this lamb was set apart after it was selected for 14 days. Then it said, on the 14th day of that month, so this new month that starts their calendar, everyone, the whole assembly, everyone, all of the people and the children of Israel would slaughter their lamb in the evening. So now you have this plan for how you should gather the lamb, how you should keep the lamb, and what you should do with the lamb. And all of those people in the body did it together. Now, if we continue on to 7, it says, and they shall take of the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper door posts of the houses, wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night. Roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, with the purtenance thereof. And ye shall let nothing of it remain of it until the morning. Ye shall burn with fire. Until the morning. And that which remaineth of it until the morning, ye shall burn with fire. So this lamb, the whole assembly had to slaughter it together. Not just, like one lamb. Everybody had to have a lamb, right? Every household that would be joined together to eat of this lamb would have a lamb. And at the same time, on the 14th day, this lamb would be slaughtered by everyone in their household. When they did that, they were to take the blood and strike it on the posts. It said on the upper and on the 2 sides. So the blood was marking where the lamb was consumed, or where the partakers of the feast were. The people who were participating in this, the blood marked where they were. And they shall eat in that night. So you sacrificed it that day and you ate it that night. This is very interesting because when I stop, it's interesting. So you had to prepare for this, right? The preparation process was 2 weeks. And then at the moment where it was supposed to happen, everything sped up, okay? So you have this lamb that's been set apart and taken care of and treated special for two weeks. Once it was sacrificed, we start moving, okay? It had to be consumed that night, which meant that you were up roasting this lamb. It's evening time when you kill it. And if you've ever roasted, smoked, grilled something, it don't get done like right away, right? And so you had to be up smoking this lamb, roasting it on the pit. And it said with fire. So however else they prepared their meats, at this time you had to roast it with fire, and you served it with unleavened bread. Now, I don't know if we talked about this, but I'm a baker. Not as my profession, but as my fun, right? I make baked goods. Bread that is leavened take all day. It's delicious. It's wonderful. I like it. It's light and fluffy and all that other stuff. But if you want that bread to rise, you gotta wait. So the bread that they consumed it with was flat. It had not been, the yeast had not been added and activated for it to rise and be fluffy. It was the flat bread, okay? That bread is tougher. It's kind of drier, right? And so they had this lamb that they had to eat that night with this bread that hadn't had its due process in rising. And it said, with bitter herbs, they shall eat it. And these herbs are thought to be herbs that were natural to that land in Egypt, and symbolic of the bitterness of the life that they had in Egypt. It was to remind them of that, right? And so this meal, it was not, what's the word I'm looking for? This meal was not like Ruth Chris, okay? This was not fine dining that they were doing. And it's very interesting that that's the way it comes across, and pay attention to it, because you had this precious lamb. If any of you are the meat connoisseurs, right? Tender, young, delicious meat, you know, you kind of got it laid out how you're going to eat this. None of that. This lamb was not to be loved and enjoyed as a delicacy. This lamb was symbolic of what was happening. And so you had something precious that was sacrificed for a high cost and then used quickly for the purpose. And so they had to consume this lamb and the unleavened bread seasoned with the bitter herbs that evening. They were not going to eat it raw, though. You had to cook it all the way. And it was not boiled. It says not sodden with water. It had to be cooked with fire. It had to go through the fire. And you had to roast it whole, okay? And it says nothing should be left of it. You had to fully consume it. And anything that remained was burned in the morning. So you when I say fully consumed, all of the meat, right? Any non-edible parts that couldn't be consumed, you lit it on fire. It couldn't be used for another purpose. It couldn't be saved for the next day. You had to partake of it during that time when it was available. And then afterwards, it had to be burned. So let me make sure I hit all my notes. Okay. As we go on, we are now in verse 11. And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. So while they were consuming this, I didn't have it today. Well, the last time I taught this lesson in Sunday school, I helped them visualize how they were to consume it, because it says you eat it with your loins girded, right? So when you at that time, if you dressed, girded means bound. So you had maybe a belt or something where your clothes were dressed for an abrupt move. If you think about it, when I'm going to church, I'm dressed as a lady, right? I'm going as someone who is probably not going to be doing any heavy lifting, right? I've got on my nice dress, my good shoes, my hair is probably done. They weren't dressed as someone who was going to Sunday service or something like that. In contrast, when I'm working, we have a day where we do deliveries and food donations. I'm dressed differently. I'm dressed as someone who's going to be hustling all day. I got on my work boots. I got on clothes that's loose and fitted so I can move around. I've got all of this stuff set up to run and get dirty because I'm about to make a move. So they're dressed as if they are going to leave in haste. They have their clothes on and ready, which is interesting because you're eating at night, okay? You would think that they would be laxed and dressed to stay in for the evening. They're dressed as if they're going, okay? Your staff in your hand, okay? You're about to take a trip. You're going somewhere. And it says, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. Time should not be wasted with this. The Lord is coming. And that is something that we as people today need to think about because we think we got time. And what he's showing here is the time in which I will pass over is only for a time, right? He is on his way. There's a thought. I'm gonna come back to it. Okay. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night. So remember I said that the Lord had told him that he was bringing the final plague to Egypt and what he was going to do. And if we go back to the 11th chapter, Exodus 11:4. And Moses said, "Thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it any more. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue, against man or beast, that ye may know how the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel." So God had already told Moses what he was going to do in his final act against Egypt. And here, as he's giving him the instructions for the Passover, this is how they will be given the provision of safety. This is how they will be exempt from God coming through. And what did he say? All the firstborn shall die. Okay? This is how they will miss being affected by this plague. They will obey what he said in the Passover. And in verse 12, where it says, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord." So he's coming through. I remember talking to my pastor years ago when I first got saved, and I was like, who is this angel of death people keep talking about? I can't find him. And I was looking for him in the Bible, and my pastor was like, no, ma'am, he's not in there. And so what we see here is that it was God that came through and took the lives as a where it says smite, as a strike against Egypt. And he did that. It says, against all the gods of Egypt, I will execute judgment. He is giving a sentence. The Lord has held court and weighed them out. And he is demonstrating that here is my judgment for what is happening here. And I am demonstrating that I am the authority over all of this. So if we ever do a study on the rest of the Exodus, what he does is he defeats in the plagues all the gods of Egypt, right? All the deities and the things that they worshipped. He demonstrated through the acts of Moses and the words that he gave Aaron to speak on his behalf that he was God. He controlled what happened in the land, not these false gods that you pray to, that you should submit to him. He was the authority. And so here he strikes even Pharaoh himself, right? Because in Egypt, they believed that the Pharaoh was a god, and he takes his firstborn. And there's no one there that can stop him from executing this judgment. And so he says, I am the Lord. He is proclaiming himself. He is making himself known in the land. And while he's doing that, when he comes through, he looks at the doorposts and he sees those who participate, or that's why I keep saying participate, partakers, those who are with him. And he spares their homes. And he does that now, right? And that's the significance of the Passover with the Passover lamb and the blood. And that's why you hear people say all the time, I'm covered with the blood of Jesus. Because when God looks, the blood of Jesus covers. And he doesn't see us as those he is executing righteous judgment on, as being deserving of death. He sees us as people who are partakers in the blood and have joined in the body with him. And he passes over. And so here it says in 13, and we're almost done with the verses, and the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. So, like I was saying, the blood on the these are posts right here. The blood on the posts are signs that they are following, or they should be passed over. And when he sees them, when he comes through, he will pass over. He will skip those houses or skip those homes. And you won't experience the plague that he's bringing, the final infliction he is striking against Egypt. And for the rest of their time, even to today, they should participate in this to remember. It says, you shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. And a feast, we think of as a party, right? It's a celebration. Like we do holidays, we're going to turn up, right? But for God, the feasts were solemn. And solemn not meaning low and boring, but serious. They were serious and sacred. They had a sincere purpose. And so when God told them to have a feast, you need to take time and dedicate to this to remember what has happened here, what it means, and what it's done. And so remember, the lamb represented the one who took the price of death so that he could symbolize that these people should be passed over. The food, the way that they prepared the lamb after it had been set apart for 2 weeks, was in haste and hurry. It had to happen at night. It had to happen that night. Remember, God was coming at midnight, right? So the blood had to be on the doorpost, and they were in there roasting and eating while he was passing over. And when they ate it, again, it had to happen that night. So no time to, bake the great fluffy yeasty rolls that we all like, right? No, none of that. That quick flatbread. And then the bitter herbs and stuff. What was available? What they had on hand that time. You didn't have time to run to the store, to go to the market, to go to get this, to go dig up this and that. No, what you had in hand. And the bitter herbs, when you eat it in your feast forever, is to remind you the bitter servitude, right? If you go back to Exodus 1, it says, 1 and 11, therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. So the more the Egyptians afflicted the children of Israel, the more they grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. And so the way that they ate this precious, tender, valuable meat was in bitterness because of what they had to experience in the time when they were trying to get free, right? They ate it in bitterness, and they ate it fully dressed and ready to go because God was passing over. And in the morning, they had to burn what was left and roll, okay? And so it says, and this day shall be unto you for a memorial. So this day of this new month for this new year, that they are starting with this act of deliverance that God is doing, they must do and observe it forever. And it is solemn, it is serious, it's a sincere act of remembering and reliving this moment so that we don't forget what God has done. I wrote down here at the bottom, God would pass through and the blood would spare partakers from his judgment. And we have to remember that he is coming and he will pass through. And only those who are under the blood will be spared from that judgment. So by the end of the lesson, we're going back to our lesson name, recall events surrounding the institution of the Feast of the Passover. So remember, the children of Israel are in bondage and working with rigor and bitterness, right, for Egypt. And Moses is there to deliver them under the call of God. And here at the Passover implementation, God has spoken what his final act, his final strike against Egypt will be. And he is providing Moses and Aaron the instructions to give to the entire assembly of children of Israel, how they will be made exempt from this final plague. Now, if we're not going to go there today. I was going to talk a little bit about it, but the thing to remember is you had to opt in here. It didn't just skip you. And sometimes we as believers, now this is worth discussing. Sometimes we as believers, or we as people who call ourselves believers, is probably the way I should say it. We just assume we're good. And there's nothing I need to do. And to a certain extent, I can understand where that comes from, because we can't save ourselves. This is not a works-based faith. There's nothing that we could have done, right? But you must believe in your heart and confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus. We must accept what he has done for us by his works on the cross, in dying for us, and shedding his blood. And so it's not something that we should take for granted, that everything's good, there's nothing I have to do. You need to opt in, okay? And that's what had to happen here. The people had to opt in. You had to participate in this if you wanted to be delivered. He wasn't just going to snatch them out of Egypt and plop them down in the promised land. There was some effort on their part, and he was very clear in what it required of them, as he is clear with us today. So they had to choose to participate in the Passover if they wanted to be saved. So also, remember the details of the Passover lamb. So this lamb was without blemish, and it was young in its prime, a male, and it had to be set apart for a time. And in the Passover, it was 2 weeks. And we see that Jesus was without blemish. Sorry, we're going all the way to the New Testament now. We go to 1 Peter 1, 19 and 20. But without the precious blood of Christ, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot, who verily was foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you. So Jesus, who was as a lamb, he was going to be sacrificed, right? And it says, without blemish or spot, he was without sin. There was nothing wrong with him. He was the fullness of the Father in the flesh. He never disobeyed the will of God. He never did anything he was not supposed to do. He did not get involved in the sins of the world. And he was foreordained. God selected him for this purpose before, it says, the foundation of the world. So he was set apart for this purpose. God had him set apart for this purpose. And so the Passover lamb represents that lamb that God would provide, that perfect sacrifice. And it says, but was manifest in these last times for you, was made, revealed, was shown, was brought forward in these times. And that's what happened with the Passover lamb. You set it apart. This lamb was, special, clean, perfect, worth something. And think about it. Jesus gave up his life in his prime. Jesus was not on earth for 120 years doing all the things, and then when there was nothing else to be done, all right, guess I'll go now. No, Jesus was young, younger than me. And he gave up his life when there was so much life to live. So much more he could have done. So much more he might have wanted, because the flesh wants to do, right? He gave up his life. The same with this Passover lamb. You had to take that lamb that was in the first year of life, set it apart only for the purpose for which it was selected. Then take it at that time and use it Only for that. There was nothing else Jesus could do while he was here except the will of the Father. So, remember the details of the Passover lamb and why it was so important. Reflect on the meaning of Passover and what it says about God. This is a lot. And so I'll try not to soak up too much time chit-chatting about it. But in fact, we can make it a group participation and you all can tell me some things you think it says about God. One of the things that I think it says is his intentionality. And that's in the example that I just gave you. Jesus being foreordained before the foundations of the world. God knew. And I talked about this in the Sunday school reviews I did. So earlier this week, I talked about God knew we would be unfaithful. He knew we would need to be delivered. He knew we would need to be corrected. He knew we would need to be saved. He already had the plan set up. He chose us anyway. He loves us enough anyway to provide a way out. He knows that judgment must come because he is righteous and he is just. He cannot allow sin to just abound forever. But in his knowing that he must execute judgment, he executes a way for us to be saved. He loves us that much. He's got a plan for the plan. And in this Passover implementation, he shows that if you are willing to partake with him, you can be saved. So that's one of the things that I say that it says about God. Another thing that it says about God is his supreme authority, because he is demonstrating and revealing himself in the earth in a land that does not accept him. But he is yet willing to do it and to demonstrate that I am the Lord, right? You might worship this. You might think this is top notch. You might think your meditation is what gets you through. You might think that, whatever it is that you pray to or whatever reality of being you think you exist in is it. But God comes through every time and he shows that he is God. And that's what he says in the Exodus. I will get my glory from Pharaoh. He'll know it's me. he'll know that it's me and I am God. And so we recognize his supreme authority and who he is in the earth when we read the Passover story, because we see that he is Lord over everything, including life and death, because he comes through and he chooses who lives and who dies. And then reflect on the meaning of Passover and what it says about God, and develop a festival of praise to God for salvation. So remember when he told them that it was a feast and they would observe it forever for all of their generations. Again, we like the party part. We like to celebrate. But remember that this is something that is serious, that we must recognize who God is and what he's done. He implements these things because he does not want us to forget. Not because he is vain or self-absorbed, because he wants you to remember so that you stay with him, so that we remember that he has done and provided for us so that we be spared. He does not want us to fall into sin. He does not want us to go back to Egypt. He wants us to be free and to live and to thrive and to be with him. That's why he brought his children out of Egypt into the wilderness, so that they could be joined with him. So when we think about instituting a festival of praise for salvation, it doesn't necessarily mean have a party, because by all means, we can celebrate. We down to celebrate. But we need to remember to how we give thanks to God for what he's done, how he's changed our lives. What oppressor were you under that made you serve with rigor and bitterness in Egypt? Some of us were bound up with some stuff. And because of the blood, we were made free. And when he comes again, we'll reign with him. So we free, right? And so think about that when you're thinking about the festival. Sometimes we get caught up in the celebration aspect, but really think about what it is he's done, how we've been made free from things that we could not get free from, because the children of Israel cried out, but they were in bondage. They couldn't do nothing about it. They couldn't go. So that's what we should be celebrating. Okay, I think I got everything in all of my notes. I do want to see, what you all think the Passover says about God, and how and what He's done and who He is, because it says a lot. It says a whole lot. But remember, you have to opt in. You must be a participant in this, if you want to go back with Him when He comes. So thank you all for joining me. I hope you all enjoyed the Sunday school lesson. Like I always say, if the Lord says the same, I will be back next week for the next lesson. I think it's the Festival of Weeks. And you all be blessed, and hopefully we'll see you again in Sunday school. Good night.